Get out of that seat before I call security. First class isn't for standby passengers. The voice rang out from the front of the cabin, sharp and loud. Captain Erica Vaughn stood tall in her navy blazer, blocking the aisle with both hands on her hips, addressing Julian Hayes like she was clearing out a stowaway. Her tone left no room for misunderstanding. She wasn't asking. She was asserting. A white man, seated 2 rows back, chuckled under his breath, shaking his head with a smirk. Another glanced away, pretending to scroll through his phone, but everyone heard it. Everyone saw it. Julian, seated calmly in charcoal leather, didn't move. He didn't blink. He simply looked up at Erica with a slow, deliberate breath and met her glare with silence. He had no interest in explaining himself to someone who'd already decided he didn't belong. His hands were folded in his lap, his posture relaxed, his face unreadable. Erica, mistaking quiet for submission, stepped forward. Do you have a premium code? Because unless someone scanned you in by accident, this isn't your seat. Julian didn't answer. Not yet. He glanced around the cabin, the polished wood paneling, the soft overhead lighting, the 6 other passengers now watching like an audience frozen before a drop. He looked down at his outfit. Dark jeans, simple sneakers, a gray crew neck shirt, unbranded, unapologetic. Erica assumed he was on standby, or worse, someone's assistant. She never stopped to ask. Just seconds before her outburst, Julian had placed his carry-on bag next to his seat. That's when Howard Gaines, a venture capitalist in his late 40s, brushed past and shoved Julian's bag aside with his foot. "Don't block the aisle," he muttered. "Some of us actually paid to be here." Howard adjusted his designer coat and dropped into the seat across from Julian like a man staking his claim. Julian said nothing, but the quiet sea hanged. It wasn't surrender. It was strategy. What Erica and Howard didn't know was that Julian Hayes didn't just book a seat on this plane. He owned the plane, owned the company that ran it, owned the private air terminal they were parked at, and in 30 minutes, he'd own the outcome of every word being said right now. But this wasn't about showing teeth. It was about watching people reveal who they were when they thought you were beneath them. Julian reached into his jacket and slowly handed Erica a generic boarding slip. No name, no gold emblem, just a barcode. It was a decoy printed intentionally for this test. Erica didn't even scan it. She waved it away. "Not premium," she announced to the entire cabin. "You'll need to exit the aircraft." Across the aisle, a younger white man named Corey Blake raised his phone, thumb hovering over the record button. "Should we be filming this?" he whispered. Before the question could finish leaving his mouth, Tara Monroe, an HR consultant with a practiced calm, placed her hand on his arm and whispered back, "Talk. Don't post. If there's a line to be held, we hold it with our voices." Corey nodded but didn't lower the phone. Meanwhile, Devin Walsh, a marketing director, leaned toward Julian. "This feels wrong," he murmured. "You don't have to take this." Julian turned his head slightly and replied in a tone barely above a breath. "Then, don't." Erica narrowed her eyes. "Who's Simone?" she asked. Julian didn't respond, but behind her, Howard piped up again. "This is what happens when we let anyone in," he said, loud enough for all to hear. "It cheapens the entire experience." With smug satisfaction, he pulled a metal badge from his coat pocket and flashed it toward the cockpit. It wasn't official. It was something he had made. A mock VIP medallion. Tara gave him a sharp look. "No one's impressed," she said. Howard smiled without warmth. Some people still need reminders. Then, without breaking eye contact, he dropped a small folded paper next to Julian's foot. Julian picked it up. 3 words, handwritten in capital letters. Try coach. Fraud. Julian turned the paper over in his hand, then held it up so the cabin could see. "This speak for anyone else here?" he asked. Devon stood. Not for me. Corey added, That's disgusting. Erica, watching it all unfold, finally snapped. You have 60 seconds to exit this aircraft or I'll have security remove you. Julian calmly leaned forward, pressed his phone back to his ear and said, Simone, call it in. Simone's reply came through with measured certainty. Confirmed. Executing escalation now, logged under verbal authority. At that moment, the power shifted. The weight of what Julian had set in motion moved through the cabin like a change in air pressure. Howard looked up, confused. Erica bristled, stepping back. What exactly are you trying to pull? She asked. Julian gave her the smallest of smiles. You'll know soon enough. Then he added in a quiet voice only Devon and Tara could hear. This isn't about the seat. It's about the silence that follows when people get treated like this every day. And no one says a word. And from the way Erica's shoulders stiffened, from the way Howard finally fell silent, it was clear. The 30-minute clock had started ticking and none of them were ready for what it would bring. Captain Erica Vaughn wasn't done. Not even close. She stormed back down the aisle and returned with First Officer Paul Kendrick, a gray-haired man in his 50s who wore his nervousness like a second uniform. That's him, Erica said, pointing at Julian as if identifying a threat. Not on the manifest. Seats unauthorized. Paul hesitated, looked at Julian, then looked at the others. Do we have confirmation? He asked softly. Do you want me to double-check with ground ops? Erica didn't blink. Security's coming. Let them sort it. Then she turned back to Julian and added just loud enough for the front row to hear. Maybe if your company focused more on training and less on takeovers, you'd know where to sit. That one sentence sent a murmur through the cabin. Devon Walsh let out a breath like a pressure valve. Julian, still seated, turned his head. You think that's what this is about? Erica crossed her arms. I think you're out of place, just like Crestwing Ventures was when it swallowed my former employer. Julian raised an eyebrow, the first trace of curiosity touching his otherwise composed face. That was it. Her resentment. Her pride hadn't been bruised by an error. It had been shattered by a merger. This wasn't about policy. It was personal. Howard Gaines jumped in. He's been squatting in that seat since we boarded. No ticket, no status. I mean, come on. Devon stood now. You don't even know who you're talking to, he said, voice firm, cutting through the luxury stillness like a warning bell. He's done nothing wrong, and you keep escalating. Erica spun toward him. And you are a paying passenger who's not blind. Devon's eyes burned. This is profiling, pure and simple. Julian reached into his jacket and placed his phone against his ear again. Simone, still with you, sir. Escalate Protocol 7, Julian said softly. Let them keep digging. Copy logs updated. Paul looked shaken. Julian glanced at Paul. The man had begun shifting from one foot to the other. Behind him, a ripple of discomfort began to spread through the cabin. Nia Turner, who had stayed quiet until now, looked up from her seat across the aisle. Her voice was almost too soft to hear. I've seen this before. Same gate, same crew, just different day. Julian met her eyes for a beat, then turned back toward Erica. You said I was unverified. Say that again. Erica squared her shoulders. You're unverified. No record, no premium status, and no right to sit here. Even if I built the jet? Julian asked. Erica blinked. What? Even if the company that designed the seat under you belongs to me? You don't expect anyone to believe that. Howard laughed. You see the kind of games these people play. Tara had had enough. These people, she repeated, her voice cold. Want to say that again, Howard? He raised his hands. Don't twist my words. Oh, no need, Tara said. They twisted themselves just fine. Paul finally stepped forward. Captain, maybe we hold on security for a second. Erica didn't respond. Instead, she turned to the intercom and muttered into her headset. A moment later, the door at the rear of the jet opened and Victor Crane entered. Security lead for the charter team, shoulders squared like a soldier on call. Problem? He asked, scanning the cabin. Seat dispute, Erica said flatly. Remove him. Julian didn't stand, didn't flinch, but the atmosphere cracked. Corey stood now. No, he hasn't done anything. Naya rose too. You're removing him because of his skin. Devon added, This is your line. You're crossing it. Victor stepped forward, unsure now. Captain, I don't see anything physical. Erica cut him off. That's an order. Paul stayed rooted. Julian leaned back and placed his hands on the armrest. Simone status. Corporate monitoring. Passengers registering verbal complaints. Cabin escalation confirmed. Noted. Julian's voice stayed calm, but inside the fire was building. Not rage, resolution. Devon pointed at Victor. You grab him and that's on record in every passenger's mind. You hear me? Every word spoken in this cabin's been witnessed. Victor's jaw clenched. I follow chain of command. Tara stepped between them. And I follow decency. Howard scoffed. You're all making this dramatic. Julian finally stood slowly, deliberately. Howard, he said, what exactly do you think is happening here? I think you're pretending to be something you're not. And what's that? Important. Julian turned to Erica. You called for removal. You raised your voice. You made it public. But you never once asked me for my name. Didn't need to, she replied. Your name doesn't matter if your status isn't valid. Then let me help you with both, Julian said. His hand hovered over his phone again. Simone. Ready, sir. Hold directive. Holding. Paul took a step forward. Captain, I think you need to pause. Erica didn't answer. She was locked in place, unsure which way to turn. The cabin had turned against her, against Howard, against what had started as confidence and had curdled into something uglier. Nia sat back down and whispered, They never think we're the ones in charge. Julian remained standing. The whole jet had become a case study in exposure. Bias revealed not through technology or social media, but through the human voices inside that cabin, through choice, through silence that became resistance. And in that moment, Julian didn't just feel the cabin tilt in his favor. He knew the balance of power had already shifted. Now all that remained was to land it. Captain Erica Vaughn wasn't backing down, not after being challenged in front of passengers. Her pride, already bruised by the merger that turned her former charter company into a crest-wing division, was now fully inflamed. She stepped closer to Julian Hayes, who remained standing near his seat, posture composed, but gaze unwavering. I don't care who you say you are, she hissed. Show me proof. Show me a booking confirmation. Show me a wire transfer, a black card, a balance sheet, anything. Or get off this plane. Her voice cracked at the edges, just enough for Paul Kendrick to glance away in discomfort. Julian tilted his head slightly as if examining her. So, it's about money now? He asked. It's about protocol, Erica snapped. People pay for access. You don't just walk on looking like. She stopped short, but the implication was already hanging in the air. Heavy and offensive. Looking like what? Devon asked from across the aisle, rising slowly. Say it. Go on. Erica flushed. I meant unverified. No, Julian said, voice low. You meant exactly what you didn't say. Howard Gaines, still seated and smug, laughed under his breath. You want to be treated like you belong? Dress the part. Julian turned his eyes on him, unblinking. And what part are you playing? Venture thief, faux executive, or just professional liar? Howard's smile froze. I could buy you twice over. Julian didn't move. You couldn't afford my silence. At that moment, Mia Lang, the youngest crew member on board, appeared from the galley. She approached Erica with a concerned expression. Captain, there's a security concern at the terminal. Should we delay departure? Erica shook her head. No, we delay for one reason only. Unauthorized passengers. This man is holding us up. She turned to Victor Crane, the jet's lead security officer, and pointed at Julian. Remove him. Victor stepped forward, his walk deliberate, his body language tense. You need to come with me, he said firmly. Now. Paul stepped in quickly. Wait, Victor, just pause. Let's think this through. He's disruptive, Mia said loudly. He's raising tensions. We have to follow safety protocol. He hasn't raised his voice once, Tara Monroe said from her seat. Not once, but everyone around him has. He's not in the system, Mia repeated. That's what matters. Julian reached for his phone again. Simone, still here. Sir, status. Passenger complaints logged, crew statements recorded verbally. You have authorization to proceed, execute final phase of Protocol 7, but wait for my signal. Copy. Standing by. Julian lowered the phone and looked directly at Victor. You put your hands on me in front of these people, and it won't be policy that ends your career. It'll be memory, because everyone in this cabin will remember exactly who stood up and who didn't. Victor hesitated. I'm following orders. And I'm giving you one, Julian said, his voice now edged with steel. Step back. The pause stretched. Then Erica barked. Victor. Victor didn't move. Corey Blake, who had been quietly observing from his seat, stood up. I know what this is. I've seen it before. Not in private jets, but in offices, in conferences, in boardrooms. You think because he doesn't announce himself, he's beneath you. And you think standing will make you noble, Howard said, rolling his eyes. Sit down. You first, Corey replied, voice firm, preferably off the plane. Erica turned toward Corey. You're out of line. So is your leadership, he said. And I won't be silent while you throw someone out over your own bias. Naya stood too. You didn't even ask for his name. You saw his skin. You saw his clothes. And you assumed. Erica's face tightened. Enough. Victor, remove him. But Paul Kendrick stepped between them. Captain, I'm officially objecting. This has gone far enough. You don't have the authority to override me, Erica said. Then escalate it, Julian cut in, because this won't be quiet. Not today. Victor finally spoke again. I can't do this. Excuse me? Erica asked. I'm not removing someone who hasn't broken any rules, and I'm not taking the fall for it. Mia stepped closer. This will go on your record, Victor. So be it. Victor turned and walked away. Erica looked like she had been slapped. Julian slowly took his seat again, then looked around the cabin, letting the silence settle like dust after a storm. Then came the crack in the armor. Paul Kendrick's voice, soft but audible. Captain, Mia told me to call security before you ever said anything. She said if he didn't leave, we should claim he was aggressive. But he wasn't. Not once. That admission broke the room open. Passengers gasped. Erica turned slowly toward Paul, horror blooming on her face. You said what? I didn't act on it, Paul stammered. But yes, she said we needed to protect the cabin image, and that meant removing anyone who didn't look the part. Tara rose again. She said that? Paul nodded. I didn't agree, but I didn't speak up either. I regret that. Julian turned to Mia. Is that true? She froze. I don't recall saying those exact words, but words were said. Julian replied, enough to make another man lie and nearly put hands on me. Devon, still standing, whispered, This is disgusting. Corey looked around the room. Why didn't anyone else say anything sooner? Julian answered quietly, Because silence is easy when it's not aimed at you. He stood up one more time, straightened his jacket, and looked directly at Erica. You asked for proof. You demanded it. You accused me, mocked me, tried to erase me. She didn't speak. He took one step forward. Then, let me give you what you asked for. He pulled a single black card from his wallet and held it up, not to show status, but to signal something deeper. My name is Julian Hayes. I am the CEO of Crest Wing Ventures, and I own this aircraft. Every bolt, every wire, every salary issued for this crew. Gasps rang out across the cabin. Corey's mouth dropped open. Naya covered her lips. Devon looked stunned. Paul's eyes welled with visible regret. Erica, pale now, whispered, That's not possible. It's already done, Julian said. You were so busy trying to push me out, you didn't notice you were standing in my space. Mia's lips trembled. Victor looked down. Howard reached for his badge again, then thought better of it. Simone, Julian said into the phone. Now, final phase confirmed. Cabin override logged. Executing internal notification. Standing by for next directive. Julian let the moment hang, and then, with the quiet control of a man who'd waited long enough, he spoke just loud enough for all to hear. Now, let's begin. The silence after Julian Hayes' revelation didn't last long. Erica Vaughn's breathing grew heavier, her eyes darting around the cabin like she was searching for a way out that didn't exist. Mia Lang took a step back, lips parted but frozen. Victor Crane lowered his head and stepped away from the aisle, no longer standing guard, but standing down. Julian remained steady in the center of the cabin, hands relaxed at his sides, eyes scanning every face, not with arrogance, but with clarity. Captain Vaughn, he said calmly, this is your final chance to speak as a leader, not a defendant. Erica didn't reply. The weight of what she had done, what she had assumed, ordered, and defended, was pressing down on her from all sides. Paul Kendrick, who'd already confessed to withholding the truth, sat down slowly, as if his knees could no longer hold the guilt. Nia Turner leaned forward from her seat, voice trembling. I've boarded dozens of flights. This is the first time someone like me said the thing we all knew and backed it up with power. Corey Blake stepped into the aisle, camera still off, hands raised in solidarity. We all watched it happen, start to finish. You can't walk that back. Julian nodded once and lifted his phone. Simone's still here. Corporate has received everything. All verbal logs confirmed. Crew incident file created. Authority established. Good, he said. Eyes never leaving Erica. Then issue the standing order for immediate termination of Erica Vaughn, Mia Lang, Paul Kendrick, and Victor Crane. A sharp breath echoed across the cabin. Erica's hand flew to her chest. You can't fire us like this, she said, voice shaking now. In front of them. Exactly in front of them, Julian replied. Because you humiliated me in front of them. Let them hear what justice sounds like when it doesn't knock. It responds. Paul buried his face in his hands. Mia whispered, Please. I didn't mean for it to go that far. You lied, Julian said. You fabricated threats. You escalated a peaceful moment into a crisis because you didn't like what I looked like in that seat. And Paul Julian turned to him, voice still level. You may not have started it, but you stood behind it until now. Silence was your contribution. Paul could only nod, eyes glassy. I should have stopped it sooner. You should have never allowed it to begin. Devon, standing now with a full view of the cabin, show. Okay, his head. This is the most honest moment I've seen on a plane in my life. Tara Monroe stood beside him. It's not just honest, it's overdue. Julian motioned toward the rear of the aircraft. You're relieved of duty. All of you. Disembark immediately. Final pay will be issued. Access revoked. Compliance teams will handle documentation. Erica's voice cracked. I gave this company everything. You gave it contempt, Julian replied. Not harshly, but with an authority that closed the door. She stepped back, shoulders shaking. Victor, Julian added, you were given the choice. You followed bias, then you hesitated, but the damage was done. Victor nodded. I was wrong. I won't fight it. But just as the crew gathered their things, ready to disembark, something shifted again. Mia turned toward Julian, hands trembling, and said through broken breath, There's something else. I need to say it now. Julian raised an eyebrow. Speak. Mia looked down, then back up, voice quiet but clear. There were complaints, at least 10, over the last year, against Erica, from black passengers, from staff. I filed none of them. I deleted them. I told Paul about 2. We were afraid corporate would overreact. The cabin gasped. Julian didn't move, but the expression in his eyes changed. Disappointment layered over restraint. You erased them? Yes, Mia said, crying now. I didn't know how else to protect the crew. Erica was respected. She flew for 20 years. At what cost? Tara asked. 20 years of silence? Simone's voice came through the phone speaker. Mr. Hayes, corporate has just confirmed Mia Lang's deletion of passenger complaints, violation of ethical and federal aviation standards. Her dismissal is being upgraded to cause-based with internal review scheduled. Understood, Julian said. Continue the audit. I want a full record brought to light. Already in motion, Simone confirmed. Passengers watched in stunned quiet. Howard Gaines finally spoke again, rising slowly, attempting one last grab at control. You've made your point, Julian. Maybe a private discussion now. Howard. Julian interrupted. You don't get to pivot now. You mocked me. You shoved my bag. You called me a fraud. And then you tried to shrink when the truth grew taller than you. You are permanently banned from Crestwing Aviation. Your client profile is revoked. Your firm's account will be flagged for executive review. Howard's face turned red, then pale. You can't. I already did. Corey, watching from the side, said, and that's the sound of the system correcting itself. Julian let the moment breathe. Let it settle. Then he faced the remaining passengers. There's no press here, no recording, no camera crew, just people witnessing what happens when power doesn't posture, but acts. He looked at Nia. You spoke truth earlier. You said you've seen this happen before. Too many times, she replied. Then I hope you never see it again on a Crestwing flight, Julian said, because this ends today. And as the crew began stepping off the aircraft, one by one, stripped of the authority they misused, the cabin finally fell into a stillness that didn't feel tense. It felt clean. Julian Hayes remained standing at the center of the cabin, watching the last of the dismissed crew exit. The moment they disappeared behind the cabin door, a hush fell, not heavy like before, but expectant. Julian didn't sit. He looked around the room, locking eyes with every passenger one by one, not asking for approval, not performing power, but affirming presence. This wasn't just about one crew, he said quietly. It was about a culture, and that culture ends today. His voice didn't rise, but it filled the cabin like oxygen. Effective immediately, Crestwing Aviation will adopt the Crestwing Equity Program across every flight, every crew, every client. We will mandate real-time bias training, require passenger complaint audits, and remove internal discretion over profile-based removals. This won't be buried in policy. It'll be spoken aloud in every cabin. Simone's voice came through on the phone. Confirmed. Press release prepared. Audit protocols being uploaded to staff briefings within the hour. Devon leaned forward, his tone still charged. You're doing this right here. Where it happened. Julian answered. That's the only place it should begin. Nia smiled faintly. Feels different already. Tara nodded. It's what real reform looks like. Not a memo. A moment. Corey added. You just rewrote the atmosphere. Julian turned toward the rear of the cabin. Simone, ensure this flight is grounded for inspection. We don't take off with rot in the walls. Understood, sir. Coordination already in motion. Then something unexpected. Victor Crane, still seated in the back, head bowed, stood and stepped forward slowly. Mr. Hayes, he said, there's something I need to say before I leave this aircraft. Julian gave him a nod. Go ahead. Victor cleared his throat. Before the flight, there was a document, a checklist update. Looked standard, but it wasn't. It was written by Mia. She told me to enforce a new cabin readiness protocol that excluded anyone unverified through dress and demeanor. I didn't question it. I should have. I thought it was just language. Julian folded his arms, but it was more than that. It was targeting, Victor said, shoulders hunched. Coded words used to justify removals before escalation. It was crafted after your company bought her charter firm. She never got over it. She planned to weed out passengers she didn't think fit the image. A long pause. And you enforced it? I did, Victor admitted. But I didn't understand the purpose until this flight. Until now. Devon's voice rose. So this was never just about one man. It was a system inside your own ranks. Julian exhaled through his nose, jaw locked. Simone, he said, log Victor's statement. Flag the checklist for internal review. Cross-check all past removals based on Mia's language. Logged and flagged, Simone replied. Pattern matching already underway. We'll know within the hour how deep it went. Tara stood beside Julian. Now you're not just cleaning house, you're lifting the floorboards. Julian turned to Victor. You're no longer head of cabin security, but your confession just prevented a deeper infection. You'll be placed on administrative review with full cooperation expected. Understood, Victor said quietly. And thank you for not burying it. Julian took a breath, then finally sat, easing into the very seat Erica had once tried to deny him. He looked out the small circular window. Morning had fully broken. Sunlight crept across the tarmac, brushing the wing with a golden edge. Then he looked across the aisle at Nia. You were the first person to look up, the first to say it felt familiar. That matters. Nia smiled. So does being seen. What do you design? Mostly commercial interiors, she said, trying to bring more black influence into luxury spaces, but clients usually tell me to keep it neutral. Let's change that, Julian said. You'll be invited to Crestwing's headquarters next month. We're redoing our fleet interiors, and I want your eyes on all of it. Nia's mouth dropped slightly. You serious? Deadly, Julian said. Visibility starts with who shapes the space. Corey clapped quietly. You just gave that seat power. Tara leaned against a headrest, smiling. Made this flight mean something more than outrage. Then Devon turned to Julian, still processing. Can I ask something? Julian nodded. Did you know it would play out like this? Julian paused, eyes focused. I suspected. So you came on board like an undercover CEO? No, Julian replied. I came on as a black man in jeans and sneakers because I shouldn't have to wear a title to be treated like a human being. That line landed hard. Corey whispered, Damn. The cabin fell into stillness, not the tense silence from earlier, but the kind that follows truth. Julian sat back, finally resting. "We don't fight to be feared," he said. "We show up to be respected." Simone's voice returned through the speaker. "Mr. Hayes, you've changed the charter policy in 27 minutes. The final implementation is ready for signature." "Good," Julian replied, "because when we lift off next time, it'll be under a different sky." The cabin had shifted, not just in energy, but in purpose. What started as a space of quiet disdain had become something rare, an airborne reckoning. Julian Hayes sat still in his seat, not triumphant, not gloating, but grounded. Around him, the passengers weren't just observers anymore. They were witnesses to something that felt personal, even if it hadn't happened to them directly. Julian stood once more, addressing the cabin not as CEO, not even as the man they had just watched dismantle an injustice, but as someone who had decided to bring everyone else with him. What happened today isn't just mine to carry. It belongs to all of you. Because you didn't just sit quietly. You spoke. You stood. You challenged. And that's what breaks patterns. A pause. This plane was. "It fly today. It wasn't ready. But next time it..." A pause. "This plane won't fly today. It wasn't ready. But next time it will lift off with policy, power, and principle all on board." Simone returned on the speaker, voice warm. "Mr. Hayes, reform measures are signed and filed, cabin override complete, and Victor's statement is archived for training." "Thank you," Julian said, "and prepare a new manifest. The future of Crestwing starts here." The cabin was quiet now, not with tension, but with a stillness earned by truth. What filled the jet now wasn't silence. It was absorption. People were still processing, but not with fear or guilt. With understanding, with clarity. Julian remained standing, watching the sunlit tarmac through the window. This cabin failed. Then it healed. That's our new standard. And with that, he pressed a button, opened the cabin intercom, and made one last announcement. "Thank you all for not looking away because of what happened here. No Crestwing flight will ever take off with unchecked silence again. And that's not a promise. It's a policy. A pause. This plane won't fly today. It wasn't ready. But next time it will lift off with policy, power, and principle all on board." Simone returned on the speaker, voice warm. "Mr. Hayes, reform measures are signed and filed. Cabin override complete, and Victor's statement is archived for training." "Thank you," Julian said, "and prepare a new manifest. The future of Crestwing starts here." The cabin was quiet now, not with tension, but with a stillness earned by truth. What filled the jet now wasn't silence. It was absorption. People were still processing, but not with fear or guilt, with understanding, with clarity. Julian remained standing, watching the sunlit tarmac through the window. This cabin failed. Then it healed. That's our new standard. And with that, he pressed a button, opened the cabin intercom, and made one last announcement. "Thank you all for not looking away because of what happened here. No Crestwing flight will ever take off with unchecked silence again. And that's not a promise. It's a policy." The jet stayed grounded for the day, but the truth that took flight inside its walls would reach farther than any mile it could have traveled. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more amazing content. The jet stayed grounded for the day, but the truth that took flight inside its walls would reach farther than any mile it could have traveled. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more amazing content.